All right, we're going to take some notes over rhetorical strategies. So, in your composition notebooks, set up a section called Rhetorical Strategies. You don't have to write down everything I say, and you don't have to write down every word on the screen, but do make sure you get all the major topics highlighted. First of all, how does this fit into American literature? This goes back to the 18th century and rationalism. It's the age of reason. It's the use of logic and science to arrive at the truth, and it trended away from religion and tradition. This makes sense because we were trying to set up a government and we were trying to move away from a monarchy and switch to a representative government that had a belief of a division of church and state. So, in order to reckon with the religious beliefs of the past, a lot of people saw themselves as deists. They believed that God existed, but that he wanted people to use their rational minds to advance men. And the literature of the era was persuasive, political, and logical. Now we're going to look at some rhetorical strategies that you might see in advertising, in speeches that are both written and spoken. Ethos is an appeal to your ethics. We like good people, so we're more inclined to believe good people. In this ad, she says, I am a neighbor, a friend, a mentor, a sister. We like all those things, of course, so we're more likely to like her and believe what she has to say. Then she follows up with, she's a Tennessee law enforcement officer. Well, now we have to believe that a Tennessee law enforcement officer is also a good person, and we're more inclined to support that job and think that job is a good thing. Pathos is an appeal to emotion. You can feel a lot of emotions. You can feel happiness, sadness. You can feel uplifted or sentimental. All of those feelings, if felt strongly enough, can manipulate you and make you support something. So Otis here is manipulating you behind his fence with his sad pug eyes, and you want to help him, so you're more likely to support the pedigree adoption drive. Logos is an appeal to logic, so using evidence to prove an argument. A lot's going on in this ad, but the major part of the ad is the cigarette and its nutrition facts. And all of these are carcinogens included in cigarettes, and they are all listed as deathly value. Uh, these are this is evidence to prove that cigarettes are bad for you. So if I look at the evidence, I am inclined not to smoke cigarettes because they're bad. I believe the argument. Kairos is an appeal to timeliness or appropriateness. So there's a moment of opportunity and I need to act now. So free membership until April 1st. Well, April 1st is coming up. I better get on this quick. Hurry, limited time offer. This weekend only. I'm more likely to act impulsively or act quickly or be inclined to do something because the time will run out. Concession and refutation are strategies that you may have already used in your writing. We don't like people who seem argumentative. We want people who are reasonable to follow and support. So, if a candidate in a political debate starts out by acknowledging his opposing candidate is a good person, they had military service, and we applaud that. They had several good ideas. They seem more reasonable. They're agreeing with the other side on different points, and it seems logical that they aren't just out to attack. They're thinking through all of this stuff. So we believe them. Another thing you can use sometimes with concession is refutation. So you would state a fact or state a decision from your opposition and then prove why that's wrong. So I may applaud my opponent on their decisions on a healthcare bill last year, but then I followed up with this is what they should have done instead. That's refutation. These are rhetorical devices that you've probably seen in speeches and in writing, and you can use it in your own speeches and writing as well, that just help make your delivery better or make something seem more memorable or more persuasive. Repetition and parallelism kind of go together. Repetition is a repetition of key words or key phrases. So in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, he repeats several times over that he has a dream, and he follows it up with whatever that dream is after he says it. By repeating it several times, he leaves us with the theme of he has a dream and these are all the things that he wants changed, and it sticks with us and it appeals to us. Parallelism is a repetition of a grammatical structure, so the words aren't exactly the same every time, but they're similar. Tell me and I'll forget, teach me and I'll remember, involve me and I'll learn. They aren't exactly the same phrases over and over again, but the structure is the same. So it makes it seem like it flows together. Thanks, Ben Franklin. A rhetorical question is asking a question that you don't intend to get an answer to, or you already kind of know what your audience's answer would be on the topic. It's not a yes or no question. It's more like if I was speaking to an audience of adults and I said, "What's up with kids these days?" And they also had come there wondering what's up with kids. They'd be like, "Yeah, man, what is up with kids these days?" That's a rhetorical question. A connotation is emotionally charged language. So there's a difference between calling someone thin and calling somebody scrawny. Scrawny has a negative association with the word, and you wouldn't want to be called scrawny. It makes you feel bad, but you probably wouldn't mind being called thin. A rose is just a flower, and it doesn't seem on its own to have any importance to it, but we have a deeper meaning, a connotation to those roses. So if you give your best good friend a dozen roses, you're implying that you probably don't want to be a best good friend anymore. Diction is a speaker or writer's choice of words. Sometimes a speaker will deliberately dumb down their word choice in order to appeal to their audience. So, I live in Missouri. You live in Missouri. All the candidates who run for office in Missouri also live in Missouri. But sometimes you'll see a candidate talk about Missouri, and that's not the way the state is pronounced, but that's the word that they use because it appeals to kind of a rural Missouri value, and they're down home, they're one of us, so they talk about Missouri values. That's an example of diction. Now it's time to talk about logical fallacies. Sometimes our logic isn't sound in our argument and it disproves our argument. We want to avoid these. Post hoc ergo propter hoc, after this, therefore, because of this, is a fallacy that we commit when we believe that because one thing occurred after another, they have to be related. For instance, did you know 100% of all people exposed to water will die? Oh my gosh, water's terrible. Those things don't really have anything to do with each other. Just because one is true doesn't mean the other is true. A false authority is when an authority cited is either not actually an authority or not an authority on the subject that they're being cited for. So Oprah is just a talk show host. She's not a scientist or a dietitian. She hasn't run any studies on any eating habits. But when she comes out and says that it's bad to eat after 6 p.m., a lot of people would believe her. But she's a false authority. She doesn't really know this from any kind of logical standpoint. So she really doesn't help support our argument. And the last one is hasty generalization. So we draw a conclusion based on a small sample size rather than looking at statistics that are much more in line with a typical or average situation. For instance, with the anti-vax movement, there was one study done that was later proved not factual that vaccines led to autism. Many more studies have been done to disprove this. However, people came to the hasty generalization that autism and vaccines were related to each other. This is a logical fallacy. They aren't related to each other at all, and there's plenty of science to prove that they're not. So now what? Make sure your notes are complete in your notebook, answer the questions on the Google form, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.